contract sat on the mahogany desk between them, unsigned, and Marilyn could feel the future splitting in two. It was October, and the afternoon light through the executive suite windows turned everything the color of amber. Warm, golden, deceptively peaceful. Outside, the studio lot hummed with its usual rhythm. Cameras rolling on 3 sound stages, costume departments fitting tomorrow's stars, commissary tables filled with actors pretending their careers weren't hanging by threads as delicate as the ones holding hers. "You understand what we're asking," David Weissman said, his voice carrying the gentle authority of a man who'd run production at the studio for 15 years. He was 52, silver-haired, respected. He'd greenlit her breakthrough role, had championed her through 2 difficult productions when other executives wanted her replaced. "This isn't about you, Marilyn. It's about survival." Across from him, at the opposite end of the long conference table sat Marcus Brennan. Younger, hungrier, recently promoted to head of studio operations after a corporate restructuring that had left half the executive team scrambling for relevance. He watched her with the cold assessment of someone calculating profit margins. "Read page 7, clause 12, Brennan said, tapping the contract with one manicured finger. "It's quite straightforward." Marilyn turned to page 7, though she'd already read it 3 times in her dressing room that morning, trying to understand how everything had come to this. The clause was indeed straightforward. She would agree to make her next 3 films exclusively with directors approved by Brennan's new division. Her creative consultation rights, hard won after her last contract negotiation, would be suspended. The publicity department would have final approval on all interviews, photographs, and public appearances. And most significantly, she would publicly endorse the studio's reorganization plan, appearing at a press conference to express her full support for the new leadership structure. She looked up from the contract. "This is about the board meeting next month." Weissman shifted uncomfortably. Brennan smiled. "Everything is about something," Brennan said. "The question is whether you're smart enough to position yourself on the winning side." The studio had been at war with itself for 6 months, ever since the parent corporation had installed Brennan as a cost-cutting measure. What had started as efficiency reviews and budget assessments had evolved into something more complex. A fundamental clash between the old guard, who'd built the studio on relationships and creative instincts, and the new regime that believed in market research, demographic targeting, and treating stars as interchangeable assets. Weissman represented the past. Brennan represented the future. And Marilyn, through some cruel accident of timing and value, had become the territory they were fighting over. "David has been good to you," Brennan continued, his tone conversational, almost friendly. "I respect that. Loyalty matters. But David's division lost $12 million last fiscal year. The board wants changes. They're going to get them, with or without your endorsement. The question is whether you want to be part of the transition or a casualty of it." Marilyn's hands rested on the contract, perfectly still, though her heart was racing. She'd learned years ago not to let her body betray her emotions in rooms like this, rooms where power was negotiated and careers were decided by men who smiled while they dismantled you. "And if I don't sign?" she asked quietly. The silence that followed felt thick enough to drown in. Weissman spoke first, his voice heavy with something that might have been regret. "Then Brennan's division will recommend terminating your current contract for breach of professional conduct. There are documented concerns about recent behavior." "What concerns?" Brennan opened a folder, pulled out a stack of memos. "Lateness to set, 17 instances in the past 4 months. Difficulty remembering lines. Your director on the last picture filed 3 separate reports. Friction with co-stars, unexplained absences." He paused. "And there's the matter of your relationship with Bobby Chandler." The name hit like a physical blow, though Marilyn kept her expression neutral. Bobby was a screenwriter, brilliant and unmarried, who'd been adapting a novel she'd fought to option for her next project. They'd spent months working together on the script, long nights in his apartment, refining dialogue and character motivation. It had been professional, mostly professional, until it wasn't. Bobby and I are colleagues, she said carefully. Bobby Chandler is married, Brennan corrected. His wife filed for divorce last week, citing adultery. She's named you in the filing. It'll be in the trades by Friday unless we manage it properly. Marilyn felt the room tilt slightly. She hadn't known Bobby was married. He'd never mentioned a wife, never worn a ring, but the lack of a ring didn't matter. What mattered was the narrative, the scandal, the way it could be weaponized. You're threatening me with a morality clause violation, she said, her voice steady despite the ice spreading through her chest. We're offering you protection, Brennan countered smoothly. Sign the contract, make the endorsement, and the Chandler situation goes away. We'll handle Mrs. Chandler's attorney, keep your name out of the divorce proceedings. Ensure the trades run a different story. You'll be safe. Safe. The word echoed in her mind like a trap closing. Weissman leaned forward, and for the first time she saw genuine pain in his eyes. Marilyn, I wish there was another way, but I'm losing control here. Brennan has the board's support. If you don't align with him, he'll destroy you to prove a point, and I won't be able to stop it. So you're asking me to choose you or him, Marilyn said slowly, understanding crystallizing. But either way, I lose. Neither man contradicted her. She stood, leaving the contract unsigned on the desk. I need time to think. You have until Monday, Brennan said, checking his watch as though her career crisis was just another appointment in his schedule. After that, the protection offer expires and the morality clause proceedings begin. Marilyn walked out of the executive suite on legs that felt disconnected from her body, through corridors lined with framed posters of the studio's greatest triumphs. Films made in the era when Weissman's creative instincts had mattered more than Brennan's spreadsheets. Her face appeared in 3 of those posters, frozen in expressions of joy and desire that now felt like they'd been performed by someone else entirely. In her dressing room, she locked the door and stood in front of the mirror. The woman looking back wore the costume from this morning's scene. A white evening gown, diamonds at her throat, hair perfectly curled. She looked like success, like stardom, like everything the studio had built her to become. But beneath the surface, she could feel something fracturing. The internal war within the studio had found its sacrifice, and regardless of which side won, Marilyn Monroe would be the price of victory. The weekend passed in a fog of carefully maintained normalcy. Marilyn attended a charity luncheon on Saturday, smiled for photographers, signed autographs for children who didn't yet understand that fame was a performance requiring constant maintenance. She had dinner with her agent Sunday evening at Chasen's, where they discussed upcoming projects in voices low enough not to be overheard, though everyone in the restaurant was pretending not to listen. Yes, I've gone to dish Saul Kravitz, had been with her since the beginning. He'd negotiated her first real contract, had guided her through salary disputes and image crises with the shrewd pragmatism of someone who understood Hollywood's machinery intimately. Sign it, he said, cutting into his steak with surgical precision. Brennan's going to win this fight. The board wants profitability, not artistry. Weissman's a dinosaur. David believed in me when no one else did. And you've repaid that faith with 3 successful pictures and millions in box office revenue. Your debt is settled. Saul set down his knife, met her eyes. Loyalty is beautiful until it becomes suicide. This is business. And Bobby, Saul's expression hardened. Bobby Chandler is a problem that solves itself if you sign the contract. If you don't, he becomes a weapon that they'll use to destroy you. His wife is already talking to Confidential magazine. Celine, they'll print anything she gives them. Marilyn felt nauseous. I didn't know he was married, she said quietly. That won't matter to the readers or to the morality clause committee. Sol reached across the table, covered her hand with his. Marilyn, I'm trying to protect you. Sign the contract. Do the press conference. Let Brennan manage the Chandler situation. In 6 months, everyone will have forgotten about the studio reorganization, and you'll still have a career. She pulled her hand away. And what about the creative consultation rights? The director approval? Everything we fought for in the last negotiation? You'll win those back eventually. But first, you have to survive. That night, alone in her Brentwood house, Marilyn sat by the pool and watched moonlight ripple across the water surface. The house had been purchased 2 years ago when her career had reached a peak that seemed sustainable, even inevitable. Now it felt like a museum of optimism. The phone rang at 11. She almost didn't answer, but something made her reach for it. Marilyn? Bobby's voice strained and urgent. I need to talk to you. Bobby, I don't think, please, just 5 minutes. I'm outside. She found him at her front gate, disheveled in a way that would have seemed romantic in one of his scripts, but looked only desperate in reality. She let him in because refusing felt crueler than whatever conversation would follow. They sat in her living room, maintaining a careful distance on opposite sofas. I should have told you about Ellen, he began, his hands twisting together. About my marriage. It's been over for years, but legally, technically, it doesn't matter now. It matters to me. He looked up, and she saw genuine anguish in his face. I love you. I thought if I could just finish the script, prove to you that we could create something meaningful together, that you'd see what, Bobby? That you lied to me. That you let me become the other woman without even telling me there was a woman to be other than? I was going to tell you. After the divorce was finalized, Ellen agreed to wait until after the Oscars to file so it wouldn't affect my nomination chances. But then she found our letters. The drafts we sent back and forth. She realized it wasn't just professional. Marilyn closed her eyes. The letters. She'd written him dozens. Now those letters would be evidence. Exhibits in a divorce proceeding, possibly excerpted in Confidential magazine for millions of readers. The studio knows, she said. They're using it as leverage. Bobby stood, began pacing. Brennan contacted me Friday, offered to make Ellen's attorney back down if I publicly stated that our relationship was purely professional, that you never knew I was married, that any impression of impropriety was simply creative collaboration misunderstood. And you said? I said I needed to talk to you first. He stopped pacing, faced her. But Marilyn, he also offered me a 3-picture deal, head writer on a major production. The kind of opportunity that comes once in a lifetime. Understanding settled over her like cold water. Contingent on what? On you signing Brennan's contract. On making the endorsement. Bobby's voice cracked. He said if you refuse, the deal disappears, and Ellen's attorney will be encouraged to make the divorce as public and ugly as possible. For both of us. So this was how it worked. Brennan hadn't just positioned her between 2 impossible choices. He'd created a web of interconnected leverage, ensuring that everyone in Marilyn's orbit had their own reasons to push her toward compliance. They're very good at this, she said softly, turning people against each other while making it look like coincidence. I'm not against you, aren't you? She stood, walked to the window overlooking her garden. You want me to sign so you can have your deal. Saul wants me to sign so his percentage doesn't disappear. The studio wants me to sign so Brennan can use my endorsement to push out Weissman and consolidate power. Everyone wants the same thing, and what I want doesn't even enter the equation. What do you want? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither of them could fully articulate. What did she want? To make films that mattered, to work with directors who saw her as more than a manufactured image, to have some control over the narrative of her own life. But those desires felt almost quaintly naive in the face of the machinery arrayed against her. I want to be more than a pawn in someone else's power play, she said finally. Bobby approached her carefully, like someone approaching a wounded animal. Then don't sign. Fight them. I'll support you. We'll both walk away. And go where? She turned to face him. You think there's somewhere in this town where Brandon's reach doesn't extend? Where Confidential won't print their story? Where we can just start over with clean slates? He had no answer. Go home, Bobby. Take the deal. Give them the statement they want. I don't blame you. Marilyn, I mean it. You have a career to protect, a life beyond this mess. I understand. She moved to the door, held it open, but I needed to figure out my own path, alone. After he left, she stood in her empty house and felt the full weight of her isolation. Everyone she'd trusted had their own angles, their own survival to consider. Even Bobby, who'd whispered about love and artistic partnership, was ultimately calculating the cost of loyalty versus opportunity. Monday morning arrived with the inevitability of a deadline she couldn't escape. Marilyn dressed carefully, a navy suit, pearls, hair pulled back in a way that suggested seriousness rather than sexuality. She wanted to look like someone who made thoughtful decisions, not the bombshell image the studio had spent years cultivating. The executive suite felt different this time. Colder despite the California sun streaming through the windows. Weissman sat in the same chair, but his posture had changed. Shoulders slumped, the fight already draining from him. Brennan stood by the window, confident, waiting. The contract still sat on the desk, unsigned. Have you made your decision? Brennan asked him. Marilyn looked at Weissman, hoping for some sign, some indication of a path she hadn't seen, but he only gave her a small, sad shake of his head, a gesture that said, I'm sorry. I tried. I failed you. She reached for the contract, and in that moment, she saw the future splitting into two distinct paths. One where she signed and surveyed, diminished but functional, a cooperative asset in Brennan's new regime, and one where she refused and faced whatever consequences followed, maintaining her integrity while watching her career disintegrate. Both paths led to loss. The only question was what she could bear to sacrifice. Her hand trembled slightly as she picked up the pen. But she didn't sign. Not immediately. Instead, Marilyn set the pen down with careful precision and said, I need to see the full reorganization plan. The one you're presenting to the board. Brennan's smile faltered. That's confidential corporate information. You're asking me to publicly endorse it. I think I have a right to know what I'm endorsing. Weissman straightened slightly in his chair, the first sign of life she'd seen from him all morning. Brennan's jaw tightened, but he was too controlled to show real irritation. The details are complex, Brennan said. Financial projections, departmental restructuring, personnel changes. Then simplify it for me. If Marilyn kept her voice level, reasonable. I'm not a fool, Mr. Brennan. If I'm going to stand at a press conference and tell the world I support your vision, I need to understand what that vision actually is. The silence stretched. Outside the window, a studio tour tram rolled past, tourists craning their necks to catch glimpses of where movie magic happened, oblivious to the fact that the real drama was always in rooms like this, where careers were built and destroyed in conversations no camera would ever capture. Fine, Brennan said finally. He walked to a cabinet, withdrew a thick binder marked confidential in red letters. You have 1 hour. This document doesn't leave this room. He placed it on the table in front of her and left, taking his confidence with him like a coat he could shrug back on whenever needed. Weissman remained, a silent presence at the far end of the table. Marilyn opened the binder. The first section outlined projected cost savings, $23 million over 3 years through operational efficiencies. She scanned the details, her stomach sinking as the euphemisms revealed their meanings. Staff reductions, 240 positions eliminated across all departments. Veteran crew members would be replaced with cheaper, less experienced workers. The wardrobe department would be consolidated. Set construction would be outsourced.